Hello students, this is Edwin Moses from the Department of English, Bishop Weber College, Tamil Nadu, India. Let us learn a new term called bioregionalism. This is under the course Eco-Literature. It may seem to be complicated, but it is just a simple term. Have you seen around yourself? Have you seen around the place you live in? Have you observed your surroundings? If you have not done so, please do. Then you can easily understand the term bioregionalism. So let us explore this term bioregionalism. Bioregionalism is a political, cultural, and ecological system or set of views based on naturally defined areas called bioregionism. A bioregion is literally and etymologically a life space, a life place. A bioregion is a land which is identifiable by its natural boundaries. You have to understand that the bioregion are not dictated by human boundaries. You can easily identify natural boundaries around the place you live in. You can easily identify nature as given us variety. So we can try to understand the definition of a bioregion. What is a bioregion? A bioregion is a part of the Earth's surface whose rough boundaries are determined by natural rather than human dictates, distinguishable from other areas by attributes of flora, fauna, climate, soils, and landforms, and the human settlements and cultures those attributes have given rise to. So it is a mingling of all these things. So if you see a bioregion, you can identify distinct flora and fauna. The climate, the soil, even the landforms are different in different regions. And the human settlements and cultures that has evolved in communion with the land has its own distinct identity. So that is why bioregion is very important. Bioregion gives variety to the place we live, right? That is why it is so significant today that we have to protect our bioregion. Now let us see some examples of bioregionalism in literature. We can trace from our own culture bioregionalism in literature. You can see bioregions in Sangam literature. Tamil society lived with a bioregional consciousness, and the land was divided into five major kinds of thinais. The thinai as a social order, which is equivalent to a bioregion or a bio. You know those five thinais: Kurinji, Mullai, Mardam, Neidal, Palai. Kurinji is a mountain region, mountain social order. Mullai is the pastoral region. And Mardam is the riverine social order. Neidal, littoral social order. Palai, desertic social order. And you can see that each region has its own culture, and the profession of the people living there are unique. And these people have their own flora and fauna, the distinct flora and fauna associated with the land. So this is a well-known example from Sangam literature and how nature is very important for the Tamils. And even in literatures, in Sangam poems, nature becomes a metaphor. The hero or the heroine's plays are given importance. where places are given importance. And that becomes a communion, a sense of place. They had a sense of place. You can see Kurunji, Mullai, Maradam, Neigal, Palem. These are some of the examples of landscapes. So, coming to examples from other parts of the world, famous American writer Thoreau's work, Walden, it is an account of his experience of a self reliant life in nature. He fostered a love for nature and the need to protect the wilderness. And Thoreau was considered as the father of American environmental movement. He is called a transcendentalist. Transcendentalists believed in the oneness of all beings. They gave importance to nature and the union of human and the nature and seeing human as part of nature. That is the essence of transcendentalist philosophy. And Walden is a lake in Massachusetts, USA. And there he attempted an experiment to live in the woods, to live in nature, a self reliant life in nature. And in that experience, he fostered a love for nature and the need to protect the wilderness. And it became the first important text in America's environmentalism movement. Daffodils, Wordsworth's Lake District, England. You know, Wordsworth is always associated with the Lake District. He's born there, and there is a term called Lake Poets also associated with Wordsworth and the other group of poets, where he refers, I wandered lonely as a cloud, and then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. Daffodils is a famous flower in the Lake District of England. So see how these writers, Walden and Wordsworth, has this bioregional consciousness while writing their poems, while writing their literatures. See, he is able to connect with the land, with the communion, with the nature. In Stradbroke Dreamtime Stories, Ujuru Nunuka, this is an example from Australia, and Nunuka laments the loss of a bioregion in the Stradbroke Dreamtime Stories. Stradbroke is an island in Australia and especially associated with the Aborigines. And in the story, Ujuru Nunukal beautifully remembers the ways in which they have lived their life once upon a time. But today, this Stradbroke Island is full of pollution. It is polluted by the anthropocentric activities of the tourists and especially the people do not have regard for this land, which was once a pristine aboriginal landscape. And Roughing It in the Bush by Susanna Moody, a Canadian writer, an immigrant who wrote extensively about the beauty of Quebec and in her diary, Roughing It in the Bush, and Manawaka series. And writers sometimes they use some fictional place in order to represent their childhood experience, especially Margaret Lawrence lived in a place called Nipawa in Canada, and it is supposed to be Manawaka. And this Manawaka, a fictional town, repeatedly occurs in many of her works, and she uses this fictional town to write about her experiences. Similarly, as how our Indian writer R.K. Narayan uses the fictional town Malgudi. Of course, these towns have some relation to a real town in India. That is considered to be, Malgudi is considered to be a microcosm of India. And similarly, Manawaka is Nipawa in Canada, according to critiques that she wrote about her experiences, her early experiences, her childhood experiences through these stories and this fictional town, Manawaka. Daffodils, Lake District. See the beautiful daffodils in England. This is Quebec in Canada. And we will understand how the loss of a bioregion happens, how it is affected. Bioregion is affected by anthropocentric activities, pollution, deforestation, industrial activities, loss of species, hunting, rapid urbanization, introduction of new species. A good example would be introduction of Chimay Carveno in Tamil Nadu has brought a lot of damage to the land, especially it will make a land dry and impotent. Nothing can grow in that area, in a specific area. So a bioregion is affected by all these anthropocentric activities. Anthropocentric means man-centered activities. And today we are promoted into a monoculture as a globalized world order. And excessive human greed is one of the reasons. Detached from our places, we are detached from our places and we don't have that sense of belongingness to our place. Robert Hart says the bioregional principle has important worldwide connotations. It is in line with the vision of Gandhi, Schumacher, who saw a new world order based on small organic groupings geared to satisfy all the needs of whole human beings, respecting each other's identities, exchanging surpluses, and cooperating rather than competing with each other. So Robert Hart gives a holistic vision of a bioregion that as human beings we have to live a holistic life, sharing our resources, respecting the diversity in the world, each other's identities, and live in cooperation with each other. But we are trying to destroy that diversity and we are trying to bring a monoculture, which is destructive for a bioregion. You can see just one example for how a bioregion is affected by anthropocentric activities. Stradbroke Island in Australia is full of plastics, and these plastics not only just affect the land, but even the marine life in the Stradbroke Island. So finally, we will understand the need to protect our bioregion. How can we protect our bioregion? To live with a bioregional consciousness, biocentric, ecocentric way of life. What is this ecocentric way of life? Regarding man as part of nature. We are not the center of nature. Anthropocentrism means man thinks that he is the center of the world, center of the earth. But biocentric or ecocentric way of life is that he is part of nature. He is just one entity, like the flora and the fauna. So we have to live with a bioregional consciousness. We have to gain awareness, knowledge of the place, history of the land, indigenous people and their cultures. And ultimately, we have to gain local knowledge. How many of us know about River Vaigai or River Kaveri? How many of us know the history of River Vaigai or River Kaveri? We know much about River Thames. And these indigenous knowledge of tribal people, can teach us a lot, can teach us to live a sustainable way of life. One example I would give from Australia, these Australian Aborigines know how to survive in the harsh bush landscape. They know how to tap water from the land, which the whites, the Europeans during the time of colonization, the Britons, they can't understand and they can't live a successful life in that dry bush landscape. But the Aborigines know how to tap water from the land. And that is the special knowledge they have. We have to respect the knowledge of these Aboriginal people, the natives, the indigenous people, all the tribal people in the world. And we have to respect their folklores, literatures, their cultures especially, and they have a lot to offer to the modern world. And this merging of modern technology and the indigenous knowledge can contribute a lot for a sustainable way of life. So finally, we have to live mindfully and deeply in communion with our land. That is very important. Thomas Berry says, and he sums up the vision for a bioregion and how a bioregion should be, or what is the need to protect our bioregion. The solution is simply for us as humans to join the Earth community as participating members to foster the progress and prosperity of the bioregional communities to which we belong. Such a bioregion is a self-propagating, self-nourishing, self-educating, self-governing, self-healing, and self-fulfilling community. The future of the human lies in acceptance and fulfillment of the human role in all six of these community functions. The change indicated is the change from an exploitative anthropocentrism to a participative biocentrism. We have to stop our exploitative attitude. We should not think that we are the center of the earth. We should not dominate or exploit this world, but live as part of the entire cosmos, as part of the ecological cycle. And we should not disrupt the ecological cycle. So we have understood what is a bioregion and the need to protect our bioregion. Just go outside and see what is the bioregion and understand and do something to protect our bioregion. Thank you.